Hello, everybody. Give this a second to see if you are all here. Hi there. Okay, I am Jodi Carlton, and if you haven't been here before, um, welcome to Spectrum Straight Talk. And this is where you get to ask me pretty much anything. Um, I am an adult autism spectrum expert and relationship coach, and this is your opportunity to talk to me about just about anything. Hello there, how are you, Mr. Red Hills Rancher? I know who you are. Um, so basically, I come here every week on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern and just chat with my folks. And this is one of my favorite times of the week. I used to do this in my private Facebook group every week, but Facebook started throttling me back and wasn't really showing you guys, everybody there, these videos. And so I decided to start talking to you here. So if you're here live, welcome. And I encourage you to just ask me questions in the chat. And that's the way we can talk. Now, before we get started, I also want to let you know that you also have an opportunity to get on a live Zoom call in a group coaching setting with me. Here, I'm talking to you and you can message me, but it's more of a one-way interaction. But if you'd like to actually get on a call with me and talk with me, the best way to do that is to enroll in a basic membership through my Spectrum Relationships membership program. And our next group coaching call is May 20th. That's the Thursday coming up, and that's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern. With that membership, you also get access to the Spectrum Straight Talk video library, which is close to 100 videos of Q&A sessions, different webinar trainings that I've done. So if you're interested in that, just visit spectrumrelationships.com and there's information there. Hi, Nathan. How are you? Good to see you as always. So I'm about to lose my voice, you guys. The pollen is still getting to me here in Georgia. So excuse me as I drink while we're talking. So first, I want to start with a question that someone sent through email today. So if you're not on my email list, that's also a really important way to get notifications of upcoming stuff. That we're always doing stuff. So if you're not on there, just go to the website and you can fill out the contact form to get on our email list. So someone emailed us today for this for the Q&A right now. And so the first part of her question, I dropped it in the comments for you guys over here, is how do you cope with coming to the realization that the life you want for yourself may not be or seem obtainable with your autistic partner? So how do you cope with this? Well, how do you cope with anything any kind of realization that that life is not quite what you hoped it would be? So the good news for you there is I have an actual strategy that I've developed for. It can really work for anybody. It doesn't just apply to autism spectrum relationships, but it's super helpful here. And any of you who are familiar with me probably already know what I'm about to say. But it's my 2 or 10. I call it my conflict management strategy, but really it's your way of determining how to proceed when there is misalignment of some sort. So your question, this member's question, is how do I figure out what to do? How do I cope with that? So, by the way, you can download this strategy on my website. Just go to the Members and Courses tab and scroll down, and it's called 2 or 10 Conflict. It's kind of a weird name. I need to rename that probably. But what we do is you look at things on a scale from 0 to 10, but I call it 2 or 10 because nothing's really ever a 0. 0 is like something that doesn't bother it. You have no opinion on it whatsoever. It's just 0. 10 is a deal breaker. Now this is a true deal breaker. And the reason I say true is a lot of folks say to me when I ask them how important this is this to you? They say it's a 10. Hey Taylor, good to see you. I'll get to you in just a minute. So a 10 is not just something that really, really upsets you and it's a big deal. A 10 is a deal breaker. This is something that you cannot live with or without. So the presence of something in your life is you cannot live that way, or the absence of something in your life, you cannot live that way. That's a deal breaker. So when we're trying to cope with the realization that our life, our relationship is not what we really were wanting it to be, what I encourage you to do is think of this scale from 2 to 10. So 2, it's not that big of a deal. Whatever it is that you need to really stop and list out your expectations and your needs and the goals that you have for your relationship and ask yourself for each of those, how important is this to me? And rate it on that scale from 2 to 10. And then so that's the first question. How important is this to me? And then the second question you ask yourself is, how much is this impacting my life? How much of an impact does this make on my life? So if the list that you make, if there's a lot of 4s, 5s, 7s, and 8s are pretty important, 2s, this is one of the ways that you can determine whether or not you really can go forward with your relationship. And this leads me into the second part of the email submission. And I see you guys talking to me, by the way, and I will address your comments there. The second part of the question that was submitted via email was, what made you finalize the separation from both of your autism spectrum partners? So this person is familiar with me and has obviously knows a little bit about my background. And so I'll share with those of you who maybe don't know, I was in a marriage for 19 years that I didn't actually know autism was a factor until after we divorced. And this was about 5 years ago. And so I really didn't put those puzzle pieces together. And we went to counselor after counselor after counselor, probably 6 or 7 counselors over the course of 19 years. And honestly, it made things worse. And you guys know I talk about this counseling. I am a trained counselor, was licensed in Georgia for 20 years. I know what the training is there, and it's just non-existent, really. So the counseling model, which is very emotion-based, was not helpful. It made things much worse. So in that relationship, the conflict, the toxicity just became so high over time that it was destroying both of us to still be married. So that's how I ended that relationship. But that was before I knew that autism was a factor. I honestly don't know what would have happened if we had had somebody like me who understands autism relationships and had recognized it. I don't know what would have happened, because he and I were best friends and we had a lot of values in common, and there were so many things that we did well in that relationship, but we truly misunderstood each other so much, and it caused a lot of conflict. And unfortunately, it caused irreparable damage to our relationship. So there's really no turning back. We do have children together, and our daughter is on the spectrum. She's 18, and that's one of the reasons I ended up specializing in this. So secondly, I was in a relationship with another man on the spectrum. And this is where the 2 or 10 comes in. He was on the spectrum, but he didn't recognize that he was on the spectrum. I totally did. He had a son on the spectrum as well. And he recognized his son being on the spectrum, but not himself. And honestly, autism was not the deal breaker. Because I knew he was on the spectrum, and I, at that point, really had learned a ton about how to be in a relationship with someone on the spectrum, it really wasn't an issue for us. We learned how to communicate. As a matter of fact, he's one of the ones that helped me develop this 2 or 10 model. We did this together. And what became a deal breaker for me was something entirely different that had nothing to do with autism. It had to do with some ways in which we were not aligned in our personal values. And so I had to stop and think about how important that value was to me. And at the time, it was very much impacting my life. And so I chose to leave. So, to answer your question, this 2 or 10 model is how we can go about figuring out if we can stay in this relationship. All right, let me take a look at what you guys are saying over here. Um, okay. Nathan's saying, I love her scale. It's about choices. Yes, it is. It's about really understanding. We have to self reflect and really get clear on our own expectations and our values and our goals, and know how important those things are to us. And this helps this scale. And sometimes it's about the relationship, but sometimes it's also just about a conflict, a disagreement that you're having. Sometimes we can be having disagreements and we stop and ask ourselves, how important is this to me? And we realize this isn't that important to me, really. It's like a 3. And the other person's like, yeah, it's a 2. It's like, why are we even arguing about this? What's for dinner? You know, put it away. All right. Nathan, also, let me back up here. You said, what is the best way to structure routine for those who need it? I enjoy my spontaneity, but as a dad, may need to provide some form of routine. So, Nathan, are you talking about, let's see, you said asking this actually is an Aspie, not an NT, because I realized that I must be flexible or learn to be flexible. So you're asking me, I just want to clarify what you're asking me. You're wanting to know how to structure routine for yourself, or for, you said it, as a dad, you may need to provide some form of routine. Are you talking about providing routine for your children or for yourself? If you can because then in the next comment you said you need to learn to be flexible. So if you can clarify that for me in the comments, then I'll address your question. I'm going to move on to Becca's question next while I'm waiting on you, Nathan. So hi, Becca. Welcome. I haven't seen you here. Oh, wait. Okay. Before I go to your question, Nathan says for a child or children. So, yeah, routine is pretty important for most children, neurotypical children, autistic children. It helps them predict what's going to happen in their world. But we also have to be pretty flexible because just having kids just inherently inserts spontaneity into our lives. For example, my daughter started running a fever yesterday, and all of a sudden our whole schedule changed because she couldn't go to school. And so we have to be flexible in those moments. Kids get sick, the school changes something, or their piano lesson gets canceled. So, what I typically recommend is that you have a basic structure to your lives. So, as the things that you can control, build a routine in there. So, bedtimes, getting up times, what time you get up in the morning, how you go about your morning in terms of breakfast, and just keep those in line as much as possible. And depending on the age of the children, you can also set bedtimes and have bath time routines and getting ready for bed, story time, those types of things. And I'm talking more about younger children here. Older children also can benefit from a similar structure. But basically, you have kind of a skeleton structure, and you go by that as much as possible. But then you don't stay so rigid that you can't flex at all, because some flexibility can be really hard for those on the spectrum. My daughter and her dad and the man I dated, my best friend's actually a woman on the spectrum. I'm surrounded, you guys. You guys are my people. Pretty much all of those folks need a heads up when they need a little bit of time to prepare for some kind of change in the schedule. My son, who's 15, today, you guys, it's his birthday. I can't believe he's 15, and look out, everybody, he's about to be driving. He's not on the spectrum. And so he will spontaneously ask his sister, hey, you want to go play tennis this afternoon? And she's like, I hadn't planned for it. I don't know. And it drives him crazy because he's a very spontaneous person. He gets that. from me. And so he's like, why can't you do anything ever? And she's like, yeah, I need some time to prepare. Um, and even though she would love to go play tennis with him, it's just the spontaneity of it that's tough. So folks on the spectrum, like you said, Nathan, have to learn how to flex in those moments, even when it feels uncomfortable. But then also, it's important to have that structure and that routine. So Nathan's saying yes, nodding my head in agreement. Congrats and prayers at the same time. Yes, I know, you guys. Pray for me. I'll be teaching him how to drive. Okay, so let's go to Becca's question now. Becca says, can you discuss autism shutdown? Okay. This is basically what happens when someone on the spectrum gets completely flooded and overwhelmed. So all of us have this mechanism in our brain that keeps us alive. And there's this system in there, the hypothalamus and the amygdala and the limbic system. And I'm getting technical with you guys. This system is constantly scanning our environment for danger. And this is physical danger and intellectual danger, relationship danger, any kind of threat. And it's running in the background. And anything that triggers it, we go into what's called fight or flight, or freeze is another thing. And that's actually what an autistic shutdown is the freeze. So you may have heard of the expression deer in the headlights. Well, that's what they do when they run out in front of the car and they see the headlights. They just freeze. They're panicked and they freeze. So when an autistic brain gets overloaded, overwhelmed, it triggers the fight or flight response. And so shutdown can actually happen in the form of fight, flight, or freeze. So a shutdown typically is not fight because that's engaging, verbally engaging in something, an argument. Flight is a retreat, and that can happen that can last for a while. So when someone's in autistic shutdown from a situation, they may completely withdraw, texting, phone calls, being in your presence for any time from minutes to days until they feel safe, till the brain says, okay, I feel safe again. Or they may freeze, which just is I can't even function. I can't speak. I can't talk. I got nothing. And it may just seem like they're being very shutting you down, and it can feel to a neurotypical like a shut out, and it is in a way, but it's not controlling. It's not for the purpose of controlling you or manipulating you. It's for the purpose of getting control back of my own world and my own space. There's a flooding that can happen from a conversation. It can happen from sensory overload. I was on a call today with a man. It was one of my autism screening consultations, and he was talking about how being in crowds really overwhelms him. And that can be from people being in your space, the sounds, the smells, just the chaos that can cause an autistic shutdown. So Becca, I hope that was helpful with your question there. And let me see if anybody is asking about that. Taylor, I see you think your question's a mess. Okay, I'll just move through your comments in order, and if I have to refer back, I will. Okay, so Taylor posted in the Facebook group today, and I've got it pulled up over here, Taylor, and I'm going to summarize because I can't. There's a character limit. Okay, good, Becca, you're welcome. There's a character limit here for comments. So basically, Taylor had been in a relationship with a man on the spectrum, and she was not getting what she needed in terms of physical touch and affection, and she really felt rejected. And they ended up having some conversations about it, and you guys dated for like a year, I think. So she realized that he was not really going to be capable of giving her that physical touch and affection that she really needed. And so she ended up breaking it off. But one of the things that Taylor says, and I'll drop this here so you guys can read it. Taylor says, I started having regrets afterwards, after she broke it off, feeling like maybe my assumptions of rejection were the issue, and maybe I could have communicated my needs differently. And then Taylor went on to say that she brought this up to her ex-boyfriend, and at that point he said, you know what, I just don't think the timing is right for me to be in a relationship. I don't feel like I can give what I need to give to being in a relationship. And Taylor saying, she went on to say, I feel sort of silly though, because there's a part of me that really hopes that we'll get back together. So I want to just say, first of all, that it's really important to listen to our gut. And sometimes we like to go back and we get self-doubt, and we like to go back and reconsider. That's what I was looking for. The decisions we made. But really, in that moment, Taylor, you made that decision based on the information you had right then and what was going on. You guys have been pretty aware of the autistic factor here. And the fact that he is now saying, this is just not the right timing for me. I think you said he's in med school. That tells me that your gut was telling you was accurate, because he's even saying now, this is just not good timing for me. So he even recognizes he's not able to show up in the relationship right now for you. Now, is it silly for you to wish that you could get back together? No, it's not silly, but it can be destructive to you to not move on with your life in the hopes that someday he'll be ready. Because if that ever happens, and he circles back to you and you circle back to him, then great. But in the meantime, go on with your life, continue developing yourself as a person. Perhaps you'll meet somebody else, and if you meet somebody else and you have this fantastic relationship with someone else, then there you go. If you don't, then if he ever circles back around and he's ready, then you may be available. But it's never a good idea to put your life on hold to wait on somebody else. That's just not a good idea. All right. Let's see. In Shaw, I don't know if you were a Mr. or a Ms. or what, but you're saying how to handle feeling alone, unloved, and no eye contact. You said he doesn't say I love you, you're pretty, and sex is seldom, so no hugs or kisses. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you are the neurotypical in this relationship, and you're in the relationship with someone on the spectrum. Excuse me, guys. Okay, so the first thing you say there is feeling. You feel alone and you feel unloved. So one of the main things I would want to do is really get to the root of how he actually does show that he loves you. The no eye contact has nothing to do with love. And it's something that those of us who are neurotypical, we do a lot, but it's very uncomfortable for most folks on the spectrum. But it has nothing to do. If we associate that with our partner loves us, and then we assign that meaning, which, by the way, that's my stages of communication, you guys, in the communication transformation program. Stage 3 is how the meaning we assign to things. So if I look at if my partner doesn't make eye contact with me, and I assign the meaning, I take that to mean he doesn't care, then I'm basically missing out on the love that he may be communicating to me by assuming that means he doesn't care. So I would really start with learning how to decipher what he does and what he says to communicate that he does love you. And really to determine, does he actually love you? Now, I don't know if he actually loves you. Do you know if he actually loves you? You're saying he doesn't say it, so he's not a words person. That's pretty common for folks on the spectrum. And so he doesn't give you compliments, and sex is seldom. So the hugs and kisses, again, that can be a sensory issue, and it can also be just a communication issue. Some folks on the spectrum don't know that kisses and hugs are wanted or are expected. And if they do know, then they sometimes may feel pressure. And so it can be helpful to have kind of an agreement about when is good for you. Taylor, the person that I was just talking to, mentioned how she was really wanting affection in the mornings. And that's when her ex boyfriend eventually was able to identify he was in the middle of his routine, which is what Nathan was talking about. His routine, trying to get his day structured, and the affectionate gestures she was making to him in the mornings overwhelmed him, which led to Shutdown, which is what Becca was referencing. So sometimes it's really what you can do is have a conversation about when is affection easier for you. The man that I dated for 2.5 years, he loved affection in the mornings, but did not, he was exhausted. He was mentally exhausted in the evenings. And if I approached him in the evening for snuggles, he was just like, I can't do it. But mornings, he loved morning cuddles. And so it's it's important to identify when is he maybe more open to that affection. Sometimes those conversations are hard to have if there has been arguing and conflict about it, because when we all have these hot topics that we've argued about, when you approach your partner about it, your partner may shut down and say, I'm not going there. That's a source of conflict. So it's critical to learn how to talk about these things in a way that both of you can hear each other and be heard. And that's what my communication model is about. Go to my website. It's on the homepage. Scroll down and check it out. It will help you out so much, you guys. Okay, Angela says, how long do you think is reasonable to figure out that part out before deciding whether our problems are a 2 or a 10? Okay, so you're referring back to the 2 or 10 model. You said they aren't a 2, but I'm not sure it's a 10 yet. So you're saying, how long do you think it's reasonable to figure out that part? Well, you can know right now at any given moment what your expectations are, what your values are, what you want for a relationship. And as far as how long it takes to determine if your partner can meet those needs, that takes longer, but it doesn't take really any amount of time for you to figure out how important something is to you. Now, the how much is this impacting my life, that's different. That part can take longer. As far as how much it's reasonable, I wish I had an answer for you there, Angela. It really depends on you and your situation. At my age, I'm going to be 49 next month, so I'm not wasting any time, honestly. I'm not gonna, and I'm still single, you guys, and so I actually am dating, and I have actually dated Aspies, and I've dated Neurotypicals, but I know what my expectations are, and if I see that there's going to be a whole lot of work and effort, I'm not wasting my time at my age. Now, for you guys, if you're in a new relationship and you're in your 20s, you may want to spend a little bit more time. If you don't, or you may not. It really depends on your own timeline. Everybody's timeline is just really different. So that's a tricky question. Okay, 8888. Hello again. You were here last week or week before. What if your expectations for your AS partner is on a higher end of the scale and you're thinking you can't be in this relationship, but your autistic partner is a great dad to the young kids, 2 and 7, and the kids love him? Oh, that's tough, because you are seeing that this is really, there's some issues there that are close to being deal breakers, but the kids really love him. So my answer to that is that your relationship is one entity, and the kids' relationship with their dad is a different entity. And something that is very important for children is to see that mom and dad, not mom and dad together, but mom is okay and dad is okay. Our kids need us to be okay. If we are struggling, if we're drowning, if our lives are not, if we're not thriving, our children see that. They see it no matter how much we try to disguise it. And they need us to be okay. And they can still have a great relationship with dad. My kids are still, involved with their dad. That relationship is entirely different than the one you have with him. And if you start to see that you have some true deal breakers there, and if you talk to him and you try to work those out, and it just does, and there's no working it out, and you see that there are real deal breakers there, it's really never a good idea to stay in a relationship or a marriage for the kids, because the kids, honestly, they are going to be divorce is hard for everybody, but being in a family where there is pretty major conflict and um, a very unhealthy dynamic between mom and dad, that's also destructive. So you want to look at all of those factors. Very good question. So Joar, or I don't know how to pronounce that. How can I learn to talk with people? Okay, I'm going to assume that you're on the spectrum. So one of the things that I recommend to my clients is to follow coaches that work with people to do public speaking, because they actually talk about how to read people, how they coach about public speaking, but also teaching and any kind of interaction with others. They teach about nonverbal cues. They teach about the vocal tone that we use, the volume that we use, how to recognize emphasis on different words, how to look for that and what to look for. And it's the kind of thing that it's like anything that like a sport or anything that like playing the piano, it takes practice. You can't, well, some people can sit down and just play the piano, but a lot of skills require, you have to learn how first, you have to learn, and then you have to practice. So as far as how to talk to people, there are coaches here on YouTube. I saw one not too long ago that one of my clients, my autistic clients, actually sent to me. Just Google it, public speaking coach, and start watching their videos, and then start practicing using some of the things that you're learning, the skills that you're learning. That was a really good question. Okay, hi Rianne, how are you? Um, you said I wasn't surprised with the results of the quiz I did last week. Guess that will help me with the assessment for autism and Asperger's in the UK. Okay, so I'm guessing you scored on up there. I haven't looked at your score specifically. What she's referring to, you guys, if you weren't on this call last week, I did, and it is still the replay is still available. I went through the autism quotient screening with folks here online. We went through it one question at a time together. And the link to that quiz is in the description of the video from last week. And so basically, we went through all the questions together. And some of you may have already done this quiz, but I went through and explained the questions and clarified, because there are some questions sometimes about what they mean. And this tool was developed by researchers at Cambridge specifically for adults on the spectrum. It's a really pretty good screening tool to identify autism traits and characteristics that are similar to other adults who are diagnosed on the spectrum. So if you're curious and you want to take a look at that video from last week, please do so. And by the way, I was on that video. I offered a private autism screening consultation with me personally. It's a 90-minute consultation, and we'll go over your test results and also your personal history and background, and I will help you get clarity. And I'm trained to diagnose, but I can't officially diagnose because of licensure regulations, but I can absolutely give you a very good idea of whether or not you are on the spectrum or not. So anyway, 5 of those appointments got snatched up right away. I do actually still have 2 available. So if you want to get on a call with me, grab one of those spots because I'm not opening this back up again probably till July. Um, the link to everything is in last week's live. So just go to my channel and look for last week's live, and it's all there. All right, Nathan's talking about, I'm going through the comments here. Nathan's talking about routines. You said your wife will make fun of you in the afternoon since she's tired. Oh, you're talking about the affection. Yeah. Oh, not routines, affection. Yeah. And that's, we all have kind of our rhythms. You know, I do too. Not just you guys, not just you Aspies. And you're saying she has a bigger personal space bubble. Yeah, than you. Yeah. So, and when you're saying bigger, I don't know if you mean that it's bigger in terms of she has a bigger need for personal space, but we all do. I was talking about that on my autism screening consultation today, about that personal space bubble. We all have it, and it's bigger, and that's why crowds can be really tough for people if their personal space bubble is pretty big, and it's hard to deal with that when you're in a big crowd. All right. Angel said, first part of my question is above that. Did I miss part of your question? Let me scroll back. Let's see. I don't actually see another part of your question. I only see the one. So let me know if I didn't answer everything. Shaw is saying, yes, my husband says he's exhausted after work. Right. This happens. And so guys, we have to accept our partners as they are. And they really have to accept us as we are too. We don't like it sometimes. But the truth of the matter is we've both chosen to be in a relationship. We've both chosen to be there. And we can't be in a relationship based on you need to be who I want you to be. Or neither partner needs to dictate to the other one who they're supposed to be. What a relationship is based on, okay, here's who I am. Here's who you are. We are different. We are 2 totally different human beings, and we choose to be together. Now, we can make requests of our partner and say, hey, I'd really, really like this. But our partner, whether it's the neurotypical making the request or the autistic person making the request, partner gets to decide if they want to honor that request. Sometimes that has nothing to do, guys. It has nothing to do with whether your partner cares about you or loves you. It has to do with our own personal preferences and needs and wishes. And sometimes we just really don't want to honor a request. And we all get to decide. When our partner makes a request of us, we are not obligated to honor it. And when we request of our partner, they're not obligated to honor it. But if our partner doesn't honor a request that's a 9, an 8, a 10, then that's something to think of. Do you still choose to be in that relationship? That's the choice you have. That's the choice we all have. We get to choose whether or not to be there. And some of you may have financial limitations that keep you in a relationship. But I really encourage you, if that's you, to and you realize you have a deal breaker. You're not stuck forever. Start looking ahead and planning to leave the relationship at some point if you truly have a deal breaker and you're financially limited, which most people are to a degree. Don't consider yourself a victim of this relationship. And we all have personal power to get ourselves out of situations. So start using resources, planning, studying up on how to get out of that relationship. Okay, let's see. You are welcome. Taylor says, thanks, Jodi. Even though he wasn't meeting my needs, it's hard not to internalize. Wondering if you could have been better, if it if it wouldn't have inspired them to want a long-term relationship versus being alone. We can always ask, Taylor. We can always think to ourselves, could I have been better? Could I have been better? But the thing is, I want you to just be you. Taylor, just be you. And the person who is right for you is going to be aligned with that. Even an Aspie can be aligned with a neurotypical. Absolutely. I see so much negativity about neurodiverse relationships that they're just not possible. They're not possible. Well, that's not true. I've been in a relationship that Asperger's was not the problem. And we were quite happy until we hit a pretty big deal breaker related to something else. But I see couples every day happy together. But the thing is, these couples are each being authentic to who they are and accepting the other for who they are. And then figuring out, this is my request of you. And I'm willing to honor that. Figuring out how to communicate, which you guys who've known me long know that communication foundation is huge. And that's why I developed an entire program around communication that you guys can do it on your own. There's a self-study option. And the 6-week coaching group will probably be open again in July. Hi, Tibbs. Hello. I don't think I recognize you. You said, hi, I asked recently about neurotypical child, Aspie parent dynamic. I have no idea where to begin as there's so much I could ask about. Can you say anything about those in my situation? So I think you're talking about an adult child of an adult autistic parent. And let's see, you went on to say, yeah, here we go. You said, my mother is NT, my father has some mobility problems, but has refused to get a job or get help, lives as a recluse. Me and my brother definitely have some ACE score points, which she's talking about childhood trauma stuff is the ACE thing. And I'm 25-year-old man, had to figure out everything myself. I realized that I don't have a real relationship with him beyond small talk. I can't risk real conversation as I can't tell what will make him angry or saying things I don't understand. Okay. Honestly, I just mentioned the communication transformation. Really, this communication model works for any relationship you're in with anybody, really. It doesn't even have to be neurotypical autistic. It's important when one person learns the formula for breaking down communication, it affects the whole relationship. And so this formula basically is 4 stages. It's what we're bringing to that conversation. That's being neurotypical, being autistic, our expectations, our goals, all these things. And I go into it in detail in the course. And then stage 2 is how we interact with each other, how we actually interact, how that actually happens. And there's a lot of different things. That this is the one that's focused on the most in counseling and self-help books, but on all these other stages are not even mentioned. And then stage 3 is the meaning that how we interpret our interactions, which it's really important to learn how to clarify with whoever it is you're speaking with, whoever you're interacting with, to clarify that you actually are understanding them and they are understanding you. This step is skipped. Most people don't know how to do this, and they don't even know that this step is happening. And this is where misunderstandings are born, in this step. And then step 4 is how we remember. It's the narratives that we have about our conversations and about our relationship with somebody based on those interactions and based on how we interpreted them and how they interpret. So our narratives can be completely different sometimes, and that's why you said when you talk to him, he may get angry. That may have to do with what he's bringing to it. It may have to do with how you're interacting. It may have to do with how he remembers a previous conversation. So you really want to learn how to interact. Now, I'll say my communication program is geared toward couples but it applies to everybody. I use it with my own kids, me and them. So it would apply for you with your dad as well. Um, so I hope that I addressed what you're asking me there. Let's see if I missed anybody. 8888, you said, what if you didn't know they were autistic until after you are married and have kids? The expectations were not met after kids were involved. Oh, so many people don't realize it until after they're married. I have quite a few folks who are in their 60s who come to me in their retirement years, and they're like, we are just now figuring out autism as a factor, and we need help figuring out if we can even live together in retirement. So you're not alone in that. So many people are not figuring this out until you do have kids. And really, all of this applies no matter what stage you're in, whatever stage you're in of life, whether you've just got married or you're dating or you have kids or you're empty nesters. It starts with education first, which is why I do this live, which is why I have the Facebook group where you guys can talk to me and to other members. Um, most of you may not. I've got a little bitty TikTok channel, but it's little blurbs. And Instagram. Educate yourselves about what it even means to what having autism, how it changes how someone interacts, and how you as a neurotypical are really, we as neurotypicals, we take for granted a lot of how we interact as just a natural thing. Whereas our autistic partners, it's not natural for them. That social exchange, that I call it that tennis match back and forth, it's not natural. So whatever stage you're in, when you realize autism is a factor in the relationship, it starts with learning about it, self-reflection, self-awareness, peeling away all the narrative. It's important to recognize that the narratives you have about your relationship are likely wrong in a lot of ways. Wrong meaning inaccurate. Because if you didn't know that your partner had autism or that your partner was neurotypical and you're autistic, whichever way, then you have been misunderstanding each other. Period. You speak different languages. You've been misinterpreting each other. And that's what's caused a lot of the conflicts. And you may say, well, duh, Jodi, of course, I know. But it's time to go, oh, yes, we disagree, but it's not why I thought. It's not because of what I thought. It's not because he doesn't care or she doesn't care or thinks I'm stupid or an idiot or all these narratives that we have. It's not for those reasons. And guys, I'm speaking specifically to those of you who are in relationships where autism is a factor, but not some other type of toxic, destructive personality. And it is possible to have both autism and a toxic personality, because these are two separate spectrums. And so a neurotypical person can be toxic and an autistic person can be toxic. So it's also important to really figure out if autism is the main thing that's causing the disconnect. And when I say autism, I mean neurodiversity. Autism is not the problem, but the neurodiversity is the problem, meaning that the difference is the problem. The misalignment because of not speaking those same languages, that is the problem. Not you, not her, not him, not her. It's the misalignment that's the problem, not the individual. Let's see. Tim said, thank you so much. All right, you guys. Does anybody else have any other questions? This has been a really, really great conversation. You guys have had some really good questions that haven't come up as much in the Facebook group before. So I'm glad to be here doing this. Again, if you're interested in any of this that I've mentioned today, I have a pretty comprehensive program, and I'm adding new stuff all the time. I'm constantly talking with my team about what can we do to provide you guys with what you need, and it's a work in progress. So if there's anything that you need, any kind of service that you'd like to see us add, shoot us an email and let us know. That ACE or trauma informed is really insightful. Yes, yes. Trauma is also a factor. It's one of those variables. You guys, stage one of communication and of a relationship really is what we're bringing to it. So we're bringing all sorts of things. We may have trauma history that we're bringing to our relationships. And if we're bringing that trauma history to every interaction too. We're bringing our level of intelligence, our knowledge of life, our actual relationship history, our roles, our scripts, all of these things, expectations, we're bringing it to every single interaction. Um, Shaw is saying Aspie doesn't apologize. Yes, that's something that um, is a difficult thing for a lot of folks on the spectrum to do, is to apologize, because apologies imply an intent to harm, an intent to deceive, and oftentimes there is harm perceived by a neurotypical partner. It's perceived and felt. But if someone on the spectrum is like, I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to do whatever it is you're saying I've done, and I don't understand what you're saying I've done. So I'm not going to apologize for that. That makes no sense to someone who's autistic. But that doesn't mean they don't care. Doesn't mean they don't care about you. Doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means that an apology doesn't make sense if there was no intent to harm. All right. You're welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here. Oh, you said that the lighting in the video. Yeah, I got my little light right here. You noticed. Thank you. Taylor says you're right. Even if you're aligned communicatively, I actually got that word out, with your autistic partner, it can make them want a relationship if they just don't, for reasons that are to do with them and not you. Yeah, so there's just so many variables that we're all bringing to relationships, and we have to take a look at all of those. So, all right, you guys, I will see you here again next week. I would love to see some of you in the coaching group on the 20th. So hop in. The basic membership is just $45 a month, you guys, to get group. You get on there and actually talk to me. And you don't have to be on video, by the way. We won't turn the video cameras on. I'll have mine on, but you will just talk. We'll be able to hear you, and the others on the call will be able to hear you, but not see you. Actually, I don't let anybody turn their video on. But it's really awesome, because then you get to really hear people talk, and you talk to me about what's going on in your relationship. So that's Thursday, May 20th. That's with a basic membership. We do it once a month. And that'll give you access to the Spectrum video library of 100 videos or so of Q&A questions like this. And they're all organized by topic. And, we've done all that for you. All right, you guys, I'm going to call it a day. It's my son's birthday. We got to go celebrate and have some birthday cake. So I will see you guys next week. Bye.